Hi everyone, this is again Anna Feleo, and with me is Anthony Vincent Bova, and you're listening to Acting, Life, and Everything in Between. Cheers!
Good morning.
Morning. So what are we going to talk about today?
I'd like to talk about when actors say sense memory doesn't work.
Okay.
It's a loaded topic, isn't it? It's a loaded topic for the critics of sense memory, and it's a loaded topic for the actors that use it successfully. So it's a very loaded topic, but let's talk about that. Why would critics of sense memory say it doesn't work? And I think actually for good reason. For very good reason. Yeah, it is for good reason, because it's mistaught so much, it's misunderstood, and it's misused. And when it's mistaught, misunderstood, and misused, it turns into many times a cerebral diuretic experience. It doesn't turn into, it's not used for what it's meant to be used for. So if you're a critic of it and you have that, thing, I get it. I have it too. When I watch the world of actors, many of them use sense memory. Not all of them, but many of them. But let's talk about what is sense memory and why is it taught? Because half of the system that we teach is based on sense memory. So I'm very steeped in sense memory, of course, but it's not about me being steeped in it. It's such a dependable tool to have and learn and use. But before we go there, let's talk about it. Anna, when your actors don't have a good time with sense memory, they just don't get it, what's the common things that come up for them?
Off the top of my head, number one is that they resist it because they just don't want to experience it, or they don't want to go back to a certain memory or a certain experience. That's one. So they'd rather just imagine something new or create something instead of exploring that memory. That one. And then also, they just say they don't get anything from it. They think of it, they listen to the side coaching, they think of it, but it's not giving them anything. They're not really transported to it.
Okay, yeah, your students are not alone. A lot of actors say, when I was doing it, I got stuck in my head.
Yeah, they say it's simpler if you just imagine. It's simpler if you just go with a character.
All right, so why does sense memory exist? And it really exists for primarily one reason. Really, it's this one reason. Is that it's when the stimuli, meaning let's say in a scene, the person that you're working against in this example, isn't enough for you to react from. So in other words, if you have an organic, because acting is always reacting. So if you are reacting off of your partner, let's just, in this example, you're in deep love in this scene and you're being swept off your feet or you're sweeping someone off of their feet. It's one of those, right? But the person you're working with, you don't even like. Never mind love, right? I'm not talking about the characters. It's about you and that other person. So we're not divorcing us saying it's not me. No. If you're just having an organic reaction, it's not going to be enough for the scene, and it'll show a complete disconnect that they don't believe you're in love. Now, what actors usually do at that point, they go, oh no, I'm not delivering because I don't even like my partner here. So I'm gonna push it. I'm gonna act like I'm in love. Oh, and they go through this acting. That's where the acting comes in. You don't want to do that. So what do you do when the stimuli that is in front of you, that you should just react from, isn't enough? Well, that's where sense memory comes in. You can now I'm not going to go through the different ways that it can be applied, but there are different ways to create the love of your life with that person that you're speaking to, or the man or woman that got away that you was really wanting. And you could create that with your partner So you're actually truly having a organic reaction. Acting is always reacting, and I'm always going to say that, because when it's not reacting, you're acting, but how do you do that organically? So in this example, and I always say example because there are so many different examples that we can bring in, so I'm just trying to make it an easy thing just to look at. If you're working with someone and they're not enough to organically react from, you can create that reality. A lot of people say, well, just imagine it, like you were saying earlier. If that works for you, fine. If you want to stretch your imagination, I don't have an issue with it, as long as it pokes at reality in you. I wouldn't depend on it, but if you want to go into imagination, believability kind of workout, that's not sensory based, okay. So what's the end point on this? When it's properly used, it's really about reacting, except you're creating the stimuli to react from, as opposed to just being thrown in the situation on a set, on stage, in a rehearsal with someone you have no connection to, and you're expected to just react.
Yeah.
When acting teachers talk about acting, I think it's many times the ego is very involved, because guess what? Every acting teacher has found their corner of truth, right? And that becomes like, it's strong. You strongly want to defend that truth sometimes. But I think it's really important to really try to be objective and say, well, why is sometimes this heavily criticized? And it really comes down to, it's usually horribly taught. People think sense memory, something is just, to feel something deep. Well, it's to have a reaction in the hopes that maybe that happens if something deep needs to be felt.
Usually, some of the actors that don't want to tackle sense memory, because they associate sense memory, the choice approach or the technique sense memory, they associate it with always something traumatic, always something heavy and angry. So they don't want to and they always feel like after a sense because it's associated to always something heavy and angry or just sad. They feel
it's always the deathbed.
Yeah, the outcome becomes they're always tired emotionally. So they've associated some of them.
Yeah, it's very true. So, but at the end of the day, again, I keep going back. Does the stimuli, meaning what is in front of you, give you what you need? And how can you get as much as you can out of what's in front of you? But sometimes you're still going to get 8% out of your 100 out of what's in front of you sometimes, or 50%.
With what's available in front of you.
Of what's available in front of you. So if you're not going to act and you're going to react, how do you create the stimuli to have that reaction? And now I'm not going to go into the processes of how to teach sense memory, but let me just touch on it a little bit.
Yes.
You ask questions to your senses, and your senses look for the answers. I remember, I think it was the last podcast, I'm like, ask questions.
Yes.
It's the same thing with your senses. And your senses are finding the answers. And when they find these answers, something exciting happens, as opposed to imposing the person, the image, the dog, the whatever you're working for. When we use the phrase working for, that means what you're trying to create sensorially. But there's another reason when it's properly used, why it's misused.
Why?
Okay, ready for this one? I always talk about, let's just go with this. You're dealing with a deep level of intimacy in this scene. Notice I'm not saying it's only the character, it's not you, no, it's you. If you're not going to be intimate, you can't expect the character to magically be intimate. It's that simple. So you're dealing with a deep level of intimacy, let's just say. Very exposing, raw, right? So you come to the set, you're looking at your partner, I got to work for, that time I was really, in high school or in that other relationship when I was right. So immediately, a lot of actors default to something else, to a choice. Well, we call it a choice. Something you want to create to have this level of intimacy in this example. But meanwhile, they know how to create sense memory. They know how to use sense memory, right? They know how to use it. But why would they do that? Well, for one reason in that case is because they're truly fearful of intimacy with their partner.
That's why they're checking out on the partner and they're just using a choice that's not there.
Yeah.
So it's an instrumental block.
It's an instrumental block. They really are like, oh my God, I can't let my partner see this is way too intimate. So I'm going to work for something, that relationship I had 2 relationships ago or something, you see?
Yeah.
So that's another way it could be misused. And it is misused. I've seen it a lot that way. As a matter of fact, I always talk about...
I'm guilty of that.
We're all guilty of that. What? Tell us. Tell.
No, I remember I was doing a fantasy soap. A fantasy soap, a series in the Philippines called Encantadia.
Yeah. The infamous
Wrestling match and all.
Yeah.
No, but that's not the story.
I want that to be the story.
No, in my case, although the sense memory worked, it did not completely work. Here's what happened. Most of the actors in that soap, in that series, most of them were my students, my actors. So I had a block of, I just want to be an actor here. I didn't want them to see me as their teacher. But even if I make a way of like just talking to them normally, they still see me as a teacher. I didn't work on it. And they were being kids. They were being, they were being kids. And sometimes I wanted my silence. Sometimes I didn't, like it wasn't my thing also. So, I would study my lines, I would study my scenes, and I put what's my obligation, my choice, I do my process, and instead of just using them in the scene, I would just pick a choice and work on that and react on that and get there. And I did get there. And for a bit I was proud of my work. And then I showed them to you. And I was proud because look, I got there. I was like moment to moment, blah, blah, blah. And then you said, yeah, you got there, but I don't believe the relationship.
Is that what I said?
Yeah, I don't believe it. I don't believe that you have a history with the daughter of your best friend.
Yeah.
So you did get there, but I don't believe that there's a history. I don't believe in the relationship. Boom! That hit me again. You were sharp shooting. It was a sharp feedback because, yeah, that's right. I had available stimulus.
Right, that you could have used.
I could have used. They were giving me that. They were being kids. It was there, and I didn't use it because I felt I don't want to deal with this. So it was about me. It wasn't about...
Yeah. You see, just keep in mind if you do utilize sense memory effectively and it helps you, be aware when you duck it, and when you choose to use it, why you choose to use it. It's going to help. That's a great story.
And you can use both actually. Get from available stimulus, meanwhile work on it. But if you can economize, no? Just
economize. I'm going to tell you a story. This is it was, I don't know, must have been with Eric at the time for 7-8 years or something, right? So, I know my stuff, right? You see where this is going? I know my stuff. I know this, right? Actually, it was even worse. I was starting to, it must have been, I forget exactly, I was starting to even teach his work in New York, right? So my students were there.
Oh!
Fun, right? So I'm like, I got it, right? So he goes, all right, Anthony, get up and work. And I did this monologue that, afterwards I'm like,
Good job.
what did you do, Ant? Talk about your process. How did you create the reality? What's the responsibilities that, the whole thing, right? Now, you think I'm a sharpshooter.
I'm so excited.
Eric, like, oh, like, it's all with love, but man, does he not mince around. It's like, like a dart, And I think I'm really good, but Eric is bizarre perceptive. You know what I mean? Some people, they're computer people and they could see layers and layers and layers and layers into the computer programming or something. That's Eric with the human condition. He goes, all right. And I could tell by the tone of his voice by saying, all right, Anthony, well, talk about your process. How did you create the reality? Because that's a very big thing in our work. We don't just compliment you on a good scene. We want to know what was the process of creating the scene. So so you can build on that. And when you go off, you go, oh, I made a turn there that wasn't productive. You see, and I said, well, first thing I did was, I was not instrumentally open, so I did a primal moan. He goes, okay. And then I did an abandonment because I still wasn't open. Okay. And then I was working for, I forget who it was. I think it was a rejection scene. I was being rejected in this monologue. So I was working for my ex-girlfriend. And then how did you create her? Well, I did sense memory endowments and I went through this whole thing. And then from there, I went boom, 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 boom. I think I talked about, I utilized like half the techniques of his system. And at that point, I thought he was just gonna
Sink.
Just sink. Like, oh my God, Anthony, no. Just simplify it, just simple. And what was my thing there? That was an instrumental block I had. Instrumentally, I didn't trust myself. My ego was invested. I had a need to impress. I had a strong need to show my stuff as opposed to just create the reality. When your need to show your talent is stronger than your need just to react to the stimuli that is in front of you, you're going to get in trouble. And that's what happened as well. These are what we call psychological or emotional instrumental blocks.
Yeah, when we say instrumental, it's your mind, your body, your emotions, your voice.
Yes.
Your memory.
It's what you're using. It's what you're utilizing to create the reality. It's not about the character. It's like, are there blocks that you have like we've been talking about? Or is there a place that is very free that you would access and liberate it? This is about your instrument. So that's a time when I misused not only sense memory but the entire system.
Oh my God! And from there, where's your ego now? Oh my gosh! After that, did you want to teach?
That was the other thing. Because my students were there, of course, I had to show that I could utilize every single technique in the system, which is huge. Right? Did I learn a lesson? Ooh, look, I'm sweating now. My bald head is sweating.
You remember it?
Yeah.
But I want to go back to that. So, you don't. We don't want to get deep into sense memory, the different ways of creating reality through sense memory. But you did mention how, the beginnings of it, and you said you want to ask sensorial questions. Why sensorial? Why ask the senses, and why not just dictate or think it?
Good question.
Because again, sometimes, not my actors, but the actors that come to me after, even the professional ones, they come to me. I killed my mom already. I killed my dad. I killed my sister. I killed my dog, and I don't get there. How do you do it? I think it.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by asking the sensorial questions, and what's the difference? At least for those,
No, I'm sorry.
At least for those who are, just to make it very clear, because this is a podcast and we're tapping into it, but this might confuse some people. So when you say sensorially, ask the question sensorially versus just thinking it.
When you're just thinking it, it's a cerebral trip. you're stuck in your head. I'm thinking about my ex-girlfriend. I'm not creating her. I'm thinking about her. Now, every now and then, just the idea of thinking of someone could trigger something in you. So, and you actually think you're doing it right because you've had this reaction. So when you ask sensorial questions, the reason why you're asking sensorial questions is that you want your senses to discover the answer as opposed to you just thinking the answer. So when they discover the answer, then you're going to be able to react, and that's how you create. And you usually always want to start off with distance first, because when you start off with distance first, whatever you're working for isn't a floater. How far is she from you? Now the senses don't say 6 feet 3 inches. Your senses just see the distance. What's the color of her hair? You don't say, well, it's dark brown. No. Now, the reason why you don't put the answers in, right, is because as soon as you put the answers in, you say the answers, your senses die. They don't need to work anymore. You fed them the answer, right? So, what's the color of her hair? Well, it's kind of dark brown with highlights and da-da-da. I don't need sense memory anymore. They died. The senses died because they were supplied the answer. So you ask them, and your eyes, you see whatever you see. And if you keep doing this, there's a good chance you're going to eventually create someone. Now, I will say this. It's not a one-shot Charlie kind of thing. You don't learn this in an afternoon or in a week or in a month or even in a year. It does take time and time of time asking the questions. And do you get a response? Asking other questions. And again, I'm being baited here because I want to go into the different ways of using sense memory. But
go ahead.
No, I don't want to go into for a podcast. I think it'll get too heady for a podcast. But there are different ways you could use sense memory working with your partner. It's called endowments, when you endow your choices, features on your partner. Or you could work sensorially away from your partner. There is so many different ways to utilize it. That said, when you're asking, now your senses are creating something and you're reacting. That's one of the ways where it's misused. I was thinking about my ex-girlfriend and it didn't work. Well, of course it won't work.
Sense memory is such a powerful choice approach technique.
It's so powerful that you could create a full system of acting around that alone. In our work, it's called a mega approach. A mega approach. There are 5 of them. Sense memory is one of them. It's a huge one. Externals is a mega approach.
Yeah.
Which is the other, working for an animal, insect, object, a person. That's the outside in kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So these are all mega approaches where you can really create a whole system of acting around these single approaches. Very exciting. But for today's podcast, I wanted to talk to the critics, and I hopefully I connected with you and validated some of your criticisms, because I really am, as someone who's really has been doing this for a very long time, it upsets me when I see it bastardized. And it upsets me when I see a teacher teach it god-awful wrong. It upsets me when I see actors have no clue on really what they're doing, but they talk like they've used sense memory. And it upsets me when I see them just getting stuck in their head. They have like constipation in their brain, and when they're in a scene and they think they're actually doing sense memory. And it's anything but the truth on that. So, and to the actors that do depend on sense memory, I hope this was shed a little bit of light on why sometimes it might not work for you, or why you think it doesn't work for you. It works brilliantly. Just look at some of the prolific actors of our time. It works brilliantly when used and utilized properly.
It's still important though to simplify if you can. If you can use whatever is available in front of you. Do that first.
You know what drill I used to do?
What?
I still do it periodically, but it was a lot. I'm hell-bent that available stimulus has to be first. I'm hell-bent. Not people sometimes escape what's in front of them because they think they got to create something, no, use what's in front of you right there, right? So I pair off people. All right, just pair off, get a partner. You're in deep love. You're only allowed to use available stimulus.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, what? I can't find it, right? And so you're really trying hard. And they're like two guys together. Like, but I'm not gay. I don't care.
You taught me that drill. I give that drill.
Do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. You got, and so what's my point on that? If you could get, I use the term dollar. That's there's 100 pennies in a dollar, right, in the States here. So I'm like, even if you get 3 pennies out of your dollar, you've got to get those 3 pennies, as opposed to saying, nope, my partner doesn't do it. I'm going to create something. No, get the 3 pennies, because those 3 pennies are going to help make that connection, even if it's 3 pennies.
That's what a version of that.
Yeah.
I tell my actors, even if you're only going to get 5% off of that, make it work. The 5%. Within the 5%, make it work. And then change partners. Again, same. Get your hook.
Yes.
I love sense memory so much. I could be in a sense memory workshop for a whole week and I wouldn't get tired. It's just a beautiful, it's deep, it's ocean deep, ocean wide. And I never get bored with it because I always get surprised at where I go with it.
The discoveries that happen. If you've kind of noticed, there's a common thing in our podcast, and it's always about asking questions. Notice that we don't have many answers all the time, but no, we do. Here's the thing with an actor. I always say, you got to have a sense of confidence in yourself that you can deliver, but you can't control the process so hard of delivering it. Does that make sense? You've got to be open to say, we're going to go here and we're going to see how this affects me and or how it works, and sometimes it won't, and you got to go, okay. Then you have to be fluid with your process, but confident, knowing that you're more than enough. You're ample. That you have so many life experiences that if you just work on learning how to access them through different techniques and trainings, then you're supplied with a lot of equipment to work effectively.
You don't have to be polished as an actor, especially when you're beginning. But one thing that I think for any kind of technique to work is this quality of being curious. This childlike quality, the childlike curiosity to ask and ask and ask, which means you cannot be lazy about this. You can't be lazy about asking questions. That in itself is a skill or a talent to be that curious. But I find that, I have a lot of actors. Anthony, at the point last year, I was teaching 70 actors a day.
Mamma mia.
Yeah. But you really see the edge of those actors who are really passionately curious about life. Because the ego, the pride goes to the sidelines. It doesn't get in the way. What's more important is that they get up fast so they can ask some more questions. They can discover some more.
And that's not, in quotes, perfect and polished. That's not that. People don't trust perfection. They trust what's under the perfection, because that's the humanity. They don't trust polished. They trust what's under the polish, because that's where the humanity is. That's where the integrity is. Polished is something that you have put in a in a box with a beautiful bow and it's presented, that's not terribly attractive. It's impressive sometimes. You go, wow. So many times growing up in the work, I would see someone very, very polished and it intimidated me. I'd go, oh my God. Especially, I always had a hard time with reading. I could never do cold readings well. I had a hard time, really, really, really hard time. I'm not dyslexic, but I have something close to that. So, watching someone pick up a script and, just read it perfectly with tears, I'd be like, oh my God, I could never do that. And as I got older and more seasoned in this work, and just as a person, that was basically just it was a polished performance. It wasn't a real experience that I look at that pulls me in. It impressed me, but it doesn't pull me in at all. I'm looking at someone's performance. Are you with? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
And remember, there's never any substitution for you.
Wow.
Fun?
I think this has been my favorite so far. Maybe because I'm such a process junkie.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying this.
You're going to say that on the next podcast. You're going to go, wow, no, this was the best podcast.
I genuinely enjoyed this one because sense memory is close to my heart.
Yeah. I get it.
I love this work so much.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Well, Liz, where's the coffee?
I hope you also enjoyed listening or watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or other podcast platforms. We're gonna have a lot more of these topics. We're gonna get deep, but we're also going to be tackling life lessons in the art of acting as well. I hope you enjoyed, but please do follow, share, and subscribe. Cheers, everyone! This has been Anna Feleo and Anthony Vincent Bova in acting, life, and everything in between.
Okay, drink it. We cheers.
Cheers.